Hi everybody, this is the October update. And as you can see, fall is in full effect here in New England. And this is not a bad thing. I will take as much as I possibly can get. In fact, I'll probably later this week drive around the neighborhood and pick up the bagged leaves that people have out on their the front of their properties, because I simply just cannot get enough. If it's not putting it in the compost, I am starting to work with figuring out leaf hay to feed the rabbits. And I've made some progress on that. I've changed some of the approach and the way that I think about some of it. More about that later. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start this update here up on the kind of the top side of the property, and I'll work my way down. So I have been noticing that the Queen Anne's lace approach that I used in my raised beds, especially the beds that have squash in them, it seems like it was a success. I made a video earlier in the year about using this as an approach to reduce the issue with squash bugs. And as far as I can tell, once the Queen Anne's lace really kicked into gear and all of those little tiny wasps started really being attracted, it saved, it almost like it gave me a second squash season, because they were starting to get a little beat up. And then it seems like once the wasps came in, then the squash plant came alive again. I think I might even have mentioned that in the last update, like, wow, man, the squash plant's doing great. I suspect it's because of the Queen Anne's lace drawing in beneficial insects. So I have been harvesting Queen Anne's lace seeds, the ones that are kind of hanging out of the planters, and I intend to propagate them all over the property. So that's one thing I've been doing. The other thing up here on the hill, you know, it's almost November in a couple days, and I'm still picking tomatoes. Last night I picked a grocery bag full of the yellow peppers. So this has been an amazing growing year outside, let alone the projects that I'll be working on here in the greenhouse. All right, that's all the stuff up here. Let's go into the greenhouse. I decided to maximize the amount of light getting into the vestibule by installing a window sash that I had laying around, as well as a piece of plexiglass at the bottom of the door. Here in the greenhouse, stuff is growing really well. I have 4 Black Beauty zucchini trees. They're getting heavy, and I am not totally sure this bamboo tripod that I set up for each of them is going to be strong enough. So that might be something I need to change for next time. They're setting fruit. There's little zucchinis on all of the plants. There's flowers, obviously, if they're setting fruit. So yeah, the zucchini's doing really good, huge leaves. The other 2 main crops, which is kale and green beans, they're doing okay, but I suspect that it's still been a little bit too warm for them. And so there's kind of going to be a falling off point where the zucchini stops doing so good and the kale and the green beans kind of catch up. So yeah, that's one of the things. I'm also planting white clover in the bed to see if it will, it's a low-lying clover, to see if it will help with soil moisture retention. So that's one thing that I'm doing. I also moved all of the strawberries off the wall. I put them in planters on the edge of the bed, as well as I've been planting some strawberries in the bed itself. Yeah, so I decided it was a poor use of space to just have buckets. It looked kind of cool, but it wasn't as efficient as it could be. So my plan is to have nursery buckets, 1 and 2 gallon nursery buckets on the wall, to be growing plants that I can eat, as well as plants, herbs that the rabbits can eat. And then come the spring, if the plant is still doing good, I can put them in the ground. So that's the plan with the wall. I still need to do a bunch of plumbing as far as the drip irrigation goes, and yeah, we'll see. I'll probably post an update on that, more on that later. Someone gave me a lemon tree I brought it into the greenhouse and then realized it's covered in scabs. I forget the name of the bug. If I remember, I'll put it right here. Fortunately, I remembered in time, hey, I need to be careful about plants I bring into the greenhouse, and I absolutely tortured this plant. I ripped every bit of greenery off it that had infected, that had pests on it, trimmed it all the way to a nub, and I'm happy to say that it's actually producing shoots. So we'll see. I've been keeping an eye on it, make sure there's no stragglers. I've been spraying neem oil on it. So we'll see, but it would be nice to have a lemon tree here in the greenhouse. Okay, so that's everything that's happening here in the greenhouse. Let's head on down the hill. I just wanted to mention that now that the weather has been cooling off and we've had some nice cold nights, I have been using the greenhouse quite a bit, just about every other night. And I'm over the moon with it. I am so happy that I made it, and it's working exactly the way I wanted it to work. So there you go. I just wanted to mention that. I'm going to be making a video, kind of a sauna, or maybe a series of sauna-centric videos, likely over the winter. So anyway, stay tuned for that. So I'm reevaluating some of the way that I'm thinking about drying vegetation for the rabbits, namely grass, leaves, and forsythia. Now, I'm still going to be doing it, but I'm going to change a little bit of how I do it. For instance, I had actually been just mowing up leaves and then putting them on these racks. I don't know that that's ideal. I think it's going to make the material too small for the rabbits. They'll eat it, but I suspect it will be a little frustrating for them. And so I'm realizing that these racks are primarily for grass. I'll mow up grass, put it on here, dry it out, and then bundle it up. I am happy with the forsythia drying method that I have. I still am working my way through that section of forsythia that's growing. I have more here that I need to process, and I'll hang that. The rabbits love it, and so that seems like that's a success. So I have been really embarrassed by how messy my feed area is, which is basically the walkout of the basement. I just have bags of feed sitting on the steps, and it's been a total disaster area, and it's been like that pretty much as long as I've had animals. I just kind of weave my way up the steps to get the right feed and give it to the animals. Well, whenever we have people stay here to watch the animals when we're away, it's really embarrassing. And I realize it's just a lot of times they're sitting right here by the door, and the bottom of the bag will get damaged because of the moisture. And it's actually not moisture coming through, but it's the condensation of the warm air coming up the steps and all that kind of stuff. And so I would end up getting bags that were moldy on the bottom. So it's poor storage. I wasn't doing a good job. So I reorganized the storage so that I have 2 gravity-fed dispensing bins for the 2 main types of feed that I use, as well as I reorganized the shelves and an experimental dispenser for the dried material that I've been making for the rabbits, be it grass and leaves. So that's the first phase of what I did. Let me show you the next. So the next phase of this feeding my rabbits vegetation from the property is storage. And so this is what I've come up with as far as the storage method. So after it's been dried, it gets bundled up into these small bundles. The reason they're small is because I need to be able to sanitize them later. Yes, they're going to be dry, they're going to be mold-free, but it's possible that there will be pathogens and pests like coccidia. And that would be very harmful for the rabbits to get some kind of a virus or pest that they pick up that are present on the leaves. And so I will need to sanitize them by putting them in a boiler pot and baking them in the oven for 20 minutes at around 200 degrees. Also, these aren't really shelves in as much as they're drying racks, right? So air can pass in between all of the shelves to make sure that there's no, moisture-related problems as well. Like I said, mold, mildew. And I also have a dehumidifier. This is actually where I keep the dehumidifier in the basement. And so it just worked out to be kind of serendipitous to have the rack right here over the dehumidifier, and it will keep everything nice and dry. Okay, big news about the chickens. The chickens are no more. I decided to give them a new home, literally. I didn't butcher them just because there was only a few left, and I have a friend that wanted to have some chickens, so I gave them to him. They're still laying, but not super regular. They were kind of winding down in their productivity. So I rehomed them. And the reason that I did that is because I'm intending to do a major reboot of how I think about chickens, how I house them, everything about the process, including entertaining the idea of going the full cycle and raising chicks and having a rooster and all that sort of thing. I haven't committed. I might end up going back to the way that I was doing it, but I decided I wanted to do a big, heavy reboot while I didn't have chickens. It seems like a good time. And my chickens had all kind of run their expectancy of productivity. And so I'm also entertaining the idea, like I said, I might not do it, but I'm also entertaining the idea of meat chickens, or leaning more heavily towards meat chickens. They'll still lay eggs, but they're going to be a heavier bird, better for putting on the table. So there you go. That's what's happening with the non-existent chickens. Okay, on to the rabbits. There has been a lot of drama here in the rabbit village. I had 2 does that I was struggling to get bred. I finally got this one, this female, to breed. And I think it was successful because she's been nest building, she's been putting on weight, she's doing all the right things. So we'll know actually pretty soon, within the next week or so, if it took. I really like this doe. She's got a great demeanor about her. She's very calm. So if she does take, it would be great to have her lineage passed on. And I ended up getting a new doe off of Facebook. A guy was getting rid of all of his meat rabbits, and I was specifically looking for a proven doe, and she's amazing. She's incredible. So she's giant. She weighs nearly 12 pounds, and I put her in with my buck, and I'm not kidding, 2.5 seconds, 3 seconds, and they had mated. So she knew what she needed to do. He obviously never has a problem figuring out what he needs to do. And so I did 4 fall-offs with her, and we'll know towards the end of November, around the 20th, if it took with her. But she's vigorous, and she's healthy, and she's such a good eater, and she has a really great personality as well. And of course, I would be remiss without mentioning H.I. McDonough, my breeding buck. He's fantastic. He thinks about 2 things: food and making bunnies, and he's really good at both of those things. I actually extended the back side of his hutch so that he has a little, kind of like a little den that he can go hide in. It would be good for the winter to get him out of the wind. I also added to all of the hutches, still need to add it to the front of his, vinyl covers to all of the hutches so that there won't be wind blowing into the hutches during the winter. On top of that, I should mention also that I added nesting boxes to both of the hutches that the does are going to be hopefully delivering kits here pretty soon. I think that's everything here in the rabbit village. I had an interesting development with the mushrooms. And lastly, the mushroom log area over here by the rabbits. I repurposed logs that I had stored over by the driveway. They hadn't really produced. I had inoculated them, but they never really produced. I used those logs to create raised beds for mushrooms, and lo and behold, when I did that, when I moved those logs to the ground, and then they got covered by leaves recently, these logs started producing mass quantities of white oyster mushrooms. And so it's a very powerful lesson on patience with mushrooms, and as well as making sure you're giving the mushroom what they need. Clearly they needed the moisture and perhaps a little bit more cover from the leaves to make them produce and fruit white oyster mushrooms. So very happy about that. I got pounds of mushrooms that we've already eaten from these particular logs, and it looks like we'll have some more tonight. Well, thank you so much. You make this channel possible in part by the fact that you keep me motivated. You're really kind and appreciated for what you do for this channel. So thank you, and stay tuned because there's going to be a lot more coming up in November.